am very excited to introduce Brandy Lang as our speaker today. She is a physical therapist and she is the owner of Visionary Physical Therapy in Harrisburg. She is going to talk to us today on ways to boost our immune system naturally. So Brandy, thank you so much for joining us. We are really glad that you're here.
Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate it. I'm so glad I'm here too. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I have always been touched by just how the Carolina's Breast Friends always tries to help bring the community together. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak. So I will kind of start and give you a little bit about my practice and how it started, and then just some thoughts I have about ways to support your immunity. Some of the things it may ring a bell to you, and hopefully some things you might not have thought of. So my practice, I've been a physical therapist for 13 years. And I've worked in various surroundings, various different settings and things like that. And my undergrad's in biology. So as far as learning about how cells interact with each other and about either autoimmune processes or how your pathways actually work together, that kind of came from that background. And then I went to PT school. Because I kind of always thought that the body can heal itself naturally. That's just my philosophy in general, and was really surprised at how much more support your body can have for a lot of different ways. And so as I started to be a PT, I just kind of progressed that, learned that, just tried to learn all I could, and had a lot of different additional education and things like that. I'm a myofascial release therapist, so in that respect, knowing that the fascial system actually can hold on to toxins, that in itself is a really good way to support your immunity naturally. Our body's 70% water. So you don't realize that not only there's organs that hold on to toxins and things like that, but there's also that fascial system that needs to be taken care of as well. So it's kind of interesting because talking about toxins, there are internal and external toxins. So when I talk about immunity, I kind of want everybody to think about lifetime immunity, okay? Immunity is not really supposed to be a response to a pathogen. Immunity is really trying to support it naturally, is understanding what the body does on the inside and understanding what actually comes together to make up our immune system, and then learning what we can do to stimulate that to be a great defense, because that's really what you want. You know, you want to have a system that can recognize invaders. You want a system that can have its own defense mechanism, which is kind of how we're built. But I have great mentors. Some of them are like naturopaths and things like that. And, you know, we always say it's kind of like we weren't built for the type of toxins that we have right now 50 years ago. Okay, so 50 years ago, 100 years ago, our food's different, our actual physical health is different, right? Not everybody works on a farm, you know, those types of things. So that makes a huge difference. And I think our immune system is definitely starting to that's one of the things that we think about first when we're like, okay, what's happening to my body? So when there's a couple of different things that I always talk about when it comes to immunity, and, you know, being a PT, first off, there's a lot of evidence that shows that exercise is a great immune support. So there's a couple of things as far as with exercise. I have some notes here I just want to kind of tell you about. I try not to be super geeky, but I know that from experience of being at some of your talks, you ladies are some, and if there's guys here too, I don't know, but everyone there at the Pink House is just, I'm always amazed at how much you dig into research and you really try to understand your type of cancer and also treatment options and different things like that. And I just applaud you guys for that. So I'm not necessarily, I don't want to go off the deep end with being geeky, but I don't want to think that you're not interested because you may be. So there's a lot of, you know, when you have an inflammatory response, you have to kind of think of, first off, whether my defense mechanism is there, okay, and it's strong enough, but also what may be the trigger, okay? So we can't necessarily always pinpoint a certain trigger when it comes to our immunity. If you have a strong immunity system, you have a greater chance, okay, and that's the important part. You have a greater chance of maintaining health, even though an internal or an external pathogen or invader, so to speak, or anything like that happens to you, a toxin. So, you know, we can definitely pick out some easy ones like, you know, smoking or drinking too much or the pollution in the air or plastics in our oceans. You know, there's lots of things that we can kind of look into. And, you know, there is a certain amount of evidence that our tissues on the inside of our bodies are taking in those toxins and they're holding them. Okay. So you want to make sure you're filtering those toxins out correctly and as best you can. That has a lot to do with what you put in your body and what you get out of your body. Okay. So with exercise, that actually decreases inflammatory activity. So, you know, you may know about cytokines, especially with tumor growth and things like that, right? A lot, I'm sure you've probably researched that a little bit. It actually improves your inflammatory response mechanisms to exercise. Now, I say that there's been some evidence to show it's not necessarily any type of exercise. So that's where you kind of have to differentiate. It has to be enough to where we actually get those responses happen. So it kind of needs to be, you know, we need to pick things up and put them down. You know, you were talking about the tire, Leslie. You don't necessarily have to go and pick up a tire like Ryan would, you know, but it's really important for us to actually pick some things that are heavy up and put them down. So I kind of like, I love yoga for the fact that it's relaxing and it has a lot of flexibility to it and everything. But yoga on a different scale may be good for your immunity, but when they do research for exercise, that's not what they're looking at. They are actually looking at enough to get, you know, to get your heart rate up and you're really kind of working a little bit hard, but not too much. It's kind of interesting because in my grad school at Winston-Salem, I did my grad research on how exercise affects IGF, growth factors in breast cancer patients. So that was actually me and a team, we actually did that as our grad research, and it was recognized by, I think like the state actually in one of our presentations, because we were able to show statistically significant evidence that you can change those growth factors with regular kind of exercise and things like that. We had heart rate monitors on our patients and all this kind of stuff. Like you had to do enough to keep your heart rate to a certain amount. And it's not as much as you think. It's not like running up and down a hill. You'd be surprised at how little, but how enough in a target range you want to kind of keep yourself to get those growth factors to actually be stimulated. So I always tell people, if you can kind of still talk to your friend, but it's kind of like stopping every couple of words or whatever, then that's good enough. You know, you don't have to buy a heart monitor or anything. You know, I don't want anybody to go out in this heat and start trying to run a marathon and get heat stroke. just because they think they're going to help themselves in that way. So that's kind of something that I always tell people, because, you know, our white blood cells actually are what helps our immunity. Okay, that's what really stimulates in different varying degrees, kind of helps support our immunity. So you get good blood lymphocytes and things like that peripherally to increase with exercise. And what's interesting is that lymphocyte mobilization through your circulation is what helps your immunity, is what helps to support your immunity. Well, that circulation happens because you're exercising and you're causing that effect because of the arteries. So, you know, for a lot of chronic disease and things like that, you know, obviously exercise is good for, but when you look at the pathology, a lot of times the reason why that happens and it is so positive is because of the stimulation that it has on those white blood cells. So I know there's a big, you know, not that I know, but from the research that I've read, I can probably, you know, imagine that, you know, keeping, you guys get tested, you know, different times of the year, depending on what your treatment is and your recovery is and things like that, to make sure those markers are where they need to be. So that's something you can definitely do positively for yourself. With that, you know, exercise with those leukocytes actually helps to build and make antibodies. So that's the effect that happens on the inside of your body. So if you're wanting to stimulate your natural defense mechanisms, that would be a good thing to do. So just think about that, you know, that's, but it's consistency. You know, if you do it every once in a while, there's a little bit of an effect, but it's not as strong of an effect as if you do it consistently. So right now, the way we are in our houses and things like that, you know, I pretty much get my husband off of his computer, at least for lunchtime, and we all go for a walk around the neighborhood. So it's, you know, good for mental health. It's good for my immunity. It's good for my joints and my back and all these other kinds of things. So that's something I try to do, and my husband appreciates it too, because he doesn't get up from his desk very often. Another interesting thing, so I got a couple more topics to kind of go over when it comes to boost, you know, kind of supporting your immunity. Another thing, and I'm not a all or nothing type of person. Neither am I an all or nothing type of therapist, because, you know, as a therapist, I get asked a lot about weight management, like pretty much all the time. And I'm sure Ryan can probably tell you that too. We have patients all the time kind of asking us, you know, how do I lose weight? What do I do? What do I do? And it's not like, hey, exercise more, because that's not really what's going to make a big difference. But what they've seen, what they've shown is that your adipose tissue can be inflamed. It's not just sitting there, you know, making it difficult to tie your shoes kind of type of thing. It actually increases cytokines by having a certain amount of adipose tissue around your midsection as well as your hips. A great thing for women, right? You're like, oh my gosh, how can I spot, you know, how can I spot work, you know, that spot workout and targeted workout and everything. And it's not as hard as you would think. And it's simple changes that can make the biggest impact, because you're the inside of your body. I'm not saying go from, you know, a size 20 to a 16 or whatever it happens to be. That's really not as important as you would think. It's about the distribution of your weight. It's about whether you have muscle versus more fat in deposits than your body's really wanting, because that actually shows a lot of the midsection type of things. That actually is an indicator that you're not detoxifying very well from your liver. So when you just think about, you know, when I always talk to people about their food choices or things like that, and I was taught this by my mom, you know, and I'm not perfect. You know, we were talking about Cheez-Its, you know, I'm not perfect. Obviously, none of us are, and we're not supposed to be in a bubble. That's not healthy. It's not healthy for your immunity. It's not healthy for your mental health. It's not, you know, you're around people sometimes if you're with family, and food is a great thing that you can share, and you can enjoy each other's company. So, you know, it's not meant to be all or nothing. It's just, you know, really thinking about, well, how many vegetables do I like? Because sometimes I work with people and it's like, well, is potato a vegetable? You know, is this a vegetable? And it's like, well, it's a starch, you know, kind of thing. But it's really an important thing to try and look for a varied a color rainbow of vegetables or things like that. I'm not saying, you know, you can't have a bowl of ice cream after dinner. That's not really what I'm focused on so much, even though, you know, there are some things that you want to make sure you're not eating a lot of sugars, because infection actually loves sugar. Okay, so tumor growth, those types of things, they love sugar. Bacterias, all that stuff, they love sugar because that's a medium that they eat. So in a lab, when you're growing viruses, bacterias, whatever it happens to be, pathogens, and I did this at UNCC, you use sugar as the medium and you put the cells there and you set it aside and they grow because that's a food source for them. So I always tell people, you know, you want to be a little bit on the lower end of those sugars just because, you know, you don't want to stimulate an attack on your immune system. You don't want to do that. You want to actually support your immune system. So your immune system likes greens and purples and blues, you know, that type of thing. So I try to keep it simple when I'm talking to people. So it's kind of like if you just think about a color rainbow, you know, pick things that are you know, pick an orange vegetable, a yellow vegetable. I actually was surprised. I found this recipe for jicama fries. If anybody's ever had or been afraid to look at this big, hard, I don't know what it, you know, it looks like a baseball, softball, you know, I don't even know. And I've gone to restaurants and I've had it on a salad, but I've never really cooked it myself, right? So I found this great recipe for jicama fries and I shared it with people. And they were like, oh my gosh, that looks so delicious. I was amazed. So it's actually a lower, it has a lot of good fiber. So fiber is huge. Okay, so you want to look for fiber in your diet. That actually stimulates not only your digestion, okay, of any sugars or fats that you eat, right? You need to have digestion for that. So it does that, but at the same time, fiber is great for your immune system, okay, because it helps to regulate a lot of processes in your system, and it's kind of like a feedback mechanism. So if these certain things are there, your immune system goes, whoa, wait, that's too much. You're putting too much on my system. I'm not prepared for this. I'm just going to go haywire. And all this other stuff happens. Whatever it points to, whatever you know, signs and symptoms or anything that you end up having, that's like just an overactive response. But when you're processing your food well, you have a healthy gut, you do all these things, your immune system is dampened down in its overactive response. And so it can actually start to have the right responses based upon whatever life throws at it. Okay, so that's a really important thing to kind of think about. So yes, the jicama is a starch, but it's actually, because of its fiber content and the fact that it's not actually really high on the glycemic index, it's actually a very good, it just surprised me. I'm like, oh, I never had it before. Let me just go ahead and try it. But all the health benefits was amazing. So my point to that is kind of like, you know, look at some recipes for eggplant. That's a really good thing to have. The first thing that goes into most people's mind is eggplant Parmesan, right? And not to say it's not delicious. I'm not saying that. There's some great Italian restaurants that I can't wait to have that at, but I can't have it every day of the week because it's got a lot of dairy. It's got a lot of, it's kind of a little bit on the greasy scale, all that kind of stuff. So really, I think I found something that was like, I think Parmesan something crusted, and I baked them. Amazing, because I learned how to actually prep it. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but you've got to put salt on it so it absorbs the water, or else it'll be mushy. So that's something I didn't know about eggplant, but it's because I was just not going to that place to learn it necessarily. So when you're thinking about your food choices and just kind of going to the store, you want to make sure you're getting that good rainbow colors and everything, because with more rainbow colors, it allows you to actually improve your metabolism so that you're burning more fat, okay? So it may not settle as much, but you're also able to change your body composition to a more muscle kind of body composition than a fat storer. You want to kind of have that. So it's very good for your immunity for that respect. So also non-inflammatory foods. I talk to people a lot about that when it comes to your immunity. And again, my main focus here is to share some information about some topics that get thrown around, maybe social media, or it gets thrown around. You can WebMD anything, okay, and go down a rabbit hole, and you're kind of like, what was my original thought, right? Because it just goes from link to link to link, and you just don't even know what you first were looking for. So when I do that, I want to give some good solid information for people, because when you go look for it, you'll say, let me go look for this, because I know Brandy maybe said that that's something I need to focus on. And so you can kind of disseminate some of the other stuff that you may hear about. So when I talk about non-inflammatory foods, it makes sense, right? If you have inflammatory foods, it's going to cause your cytokines to go up. It's going to cause those markers, those inflammatory markers, to go up, which that cascade leads us down a path of dis-ease, okay? So wellness is not necessarily the absence of disease, right? Wellness is our ability to support the natural mechanisms within our body so that we can be fighters. Our own body can fight what's getting thrown at us all the time. So, I always tell people, kind of make it easy for them when it comes to inflammatory foods too, is to say, if it's in a box or a window, it's probably not the best. Now, I will say, again, I'm not perfect. I've got an 11-year-old here at home, and it's summertime. I'm just, there's very little camps I can put him in, right? I found a couple, and I'm like, thank you, right? Because I want him to be around other kids. But they of course, have procedures to make sure everybody's healthy when they get the kids together. But at the same time, it's like he gets out of camp, and he's like, can we go buy Chick-fil-A? So again, nobody's perfect, and that's not the point. It's really about that balance, to where if it's, moderation is really good. Okay. I mean, I love a fry, so, but at the same time, I recognize it for what it is. And that's what's making you a smart, not just smart consumer, but a smart advocate for your own wellness, is that you understand that what it kind of might it's cooked in, how many. It's not just about calories, you know. It's really about bad fats or not so good fats versus good fats. You know, good fats are very good to support our immunity. It actually helps a lot of our endocrine system to work efficiently. Okay, those types of things, and it actually does help us burn fat. You don't think so, but you know, the coconut oils, the avocado oils, and actually the avocado itself, those are really good fats. I tell people, you know, if you don't like, you know, try walnuts, try, you know, those types of things, because it's really good fats, good omegas in that, good for the brain, good for the gut, all those types of things. So, you know, I kind of joke when I talk about a window or a box, but, you know, I'm teaching my kid how to read labels in a way. And I think sometimes because of the environment in which we live in, maybe it's, you know, right now it's stressful, you know, it's hard to stay connected, this is a great forum in which to do that. But sometimes you go down the aisle and it's just kind of like, gosh, I just don't want to eat chicken again. You know, it's just kind of like one of those things, and convenience is great sometimes, but we just need to be our best advocate and kind of take a look at those things for ourselves. So when I, you know, talk to people about that, it's kind of like, look at, if you do not know what your first 5 to 6 ingredients are, you probably need to put it back on the shelf. Like if you don't know what it is, you probably need to put it back on the shelf. I say that, and I also tell people if the first 5 to 6 ingredients has more than one occurrence of sugar or a sugar derivative, you need to put it back on the shelf. Now, there are some good, you know, companies, and that just, you know, there can be a lot of different ones, and I'm not going to kind of belabor with that because there's way more than I know of, I know. But there's a lot of, you know, good responsible companies out there that are trying to put whole foods and whole ingredients into products that can also be convenient. So it's not necessarily that's the case, you know, that anything in a box is awful, but it's just about being a good consumer, because if those kind of things are there, then those things that I mentioned in the first 5 or 6 ingredients, you're more than likely going to have an increase in that inflammation. So, you know, I know that's a big proponent for, or big kind of thought process for the ladies here, is to just try to, you know, decrease your chance of having inflammatory responses that aren't good for you. So that's kind of what I wanted to say about that. And also, you know, juices can hide a lot of sugars, and it's usually not as high in fiber as you want. So be very careful about that. You know, I'd much rather have 1 or 2 fruits that are actual fruits than to push a lot of fruits in like a juice, because you're getting a lot of fructose and glucose that's going quickly into your system that may not have the fiber to push it through. So again, if you have a lot of that spikes in sugars really quickly, then that without that fiber to balance it out and to kind of move it through your system, well, then it's going to kind of stimulate your system to be a little bit more inflammatory. So I try to just kind of caution people with that, because, you know, palm or this or that, I mean, I don't want to pick on a certain, you know, manufacturer necessarily. But I just, you know, I try to tell people, well, you know, just go pick up a grape, go pick up an orange, go pick up an apple, you know. So that's good too. So that brings me to kind of gut health. Okay. Gut health is definitely more trending now, I guess you could say, right? Our immunity definitely starts from our gut. Okay, so exercise does stimulate good immunity when it decreases inflammation in your gut and things like that, and some of the things that I talked about. But 2/3 of your immunity cells for your body is in that gut. Okay, that's 2/3. So, you know, a lot of people I've noticed, especially even in my age group, A lot of autoimmune diseases, a lot of gut-related issues, Crohn's disease, IBS, all those types of things that points specifically to your gut. But a lot of times people really just don't understand that your immunity in general on a global scale is very connected to your gut health. So, with that said, I always tell people it's like, your vitamin D is synthesized in your gut. Serotonin is made in your gut. A lot of different vitamins and minerals are actually very closely related to your gut health. Okay. So if you're not going to the bathroom at least 2 to 3 times a day, and that does mean a bowel movement, you probably could stand to use a very good either fiber supplement or a probiotic. There's definitely really good benefits from that. So I kind of, that's my recommendation for some folks. So when you talk about that, vitamin D is an immunoreceptor. Okay. So it's definitely linked to having a strong or a supported immune system. We have a vitamin D receptor on every cell in our body. So if that doesn't give you enough indication, it's an important thing to have. That's a really good. You already know you have a map, right? So I know I've been in some talks where that's been a focus of some integrative oncologists, and I applaud them for that. Because it's a very important thing. But with gut health comes an issue with absorption. And that's where a lot of focus, and there's like a lot of good evidence, a lot of good research, a lot of good research being done on kind of looking at absorption. So a good probiotic is actually meant to be a lot of good gut bugs. I have a mentor who says, bad gut bugs don't take a day off, so good gut bugs shouldn't take a day off, right? And if you're immunosuppressed, or if you've had rounds of antibiotics, or if just one round is enough to really, really, really put your immune system in the toilet, you should immediately start to build back those good gut bugs with a good probiotic. But the thing about it is, if you already have an inflamed gut, it's going to be hard to even get those good gut bugs to that source. So I always tell people to look for a live back. It's literally live BAC. It's a certain technology, live back technology, that keeps those good gut bugs encapsulated so they're not dead. Okay, so you got to be very cautious when you're looking for one, especially if you're, going in the grocery store. It's probably not, I'm not sure, but I haven't seen a lot of great ones there. But, if you're going to look for one, you want to look for one that has live back technology so that those good gut bugs actually are alive by the time they get to the source. Because a lot of times it can look like something on the back of the label, but they're not live when they go in your body. So you're just, it's not really going to help you, obviously, because they're just not getting there. So that's a really good recommendation that I help people with or talk to them about. And actually those good fats play a part in your gut health as well. That's going to stimulate a lot of healing. Okay. So I've seen really, and it's funny, you were asking me, Leslie, about having a PowerPoint or this or that before. And like I said, I want to make it more personal and just kind of talking to folks, but there's some really good, kind of gruesome, to be honest, some pictures of intestines that are inflamed. I'm like, do I really want to put that out here? I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. It may scare people away. But it's, to me, being a scientist, to be a biologist, I love that in a way, because it's like, wow, that's how, so your stomach, your intestines have these fingers, they're cilia. Okay, so they're supposed to grab nutrients, get it, bring it to the inside of your body so your body can utilize everything. But a couple of things can go on. First off, and I found this for myself to be true, not everybody has the genetic support mechanisms to actually either synthesize certain vitamins or utilize certain vitamins. I'm a case for that myself. I don't methylate B vitamins very well. So that's something I have to take. So I can eat all the meat I want, which is kind of the only source that's really got a lot of it in there, but it's not going to methylate, which means it has to be converted in a form that our body can use. So that's where you have to be really smart about those things. It's not enough just to pick something off the shelf if you can't convert that form, or it's not in the form that's already converted. So that's a good thing, since we're talking about gut health, because serotonin is part of that B vitamin pathway. So that helps with our moods, right? That helps with us having a calming effect and those types of things. So we can manage stress, and that's another part of my talk too. So you have to think like it's all connected, right? Your gut health is intimately connected to whether you're able to put the systems in place to help you in other areas of your health as well. It's a huge indicator. So what happens a lot of times with leaky gut, and we hear a lot about that right now, okay? Not just because of what's going on, but just in general, I think it started to have a lot more news as far as general health is concerned, before any of this other stuff happened. So, but what's interesting is when you have an inflamed gut, those cilia aren't closed anymore, okay? This is like your army, right? These are the guys that protect you against pathogens, but they also bring in all the nutrition that you're supposed to be getting, okay? To support your immunity, but your overall health as well. But when it gets inflamed, those cilia start to open up and there's gaps, okay? When that happens, a lot of pathogens find their way into your system a lot easier. A lot of toxins find your way into your system easier. Undigested food, unfortunately, finds its way into your system easier. So that in itself is not the way our plumbing is supposed to be. I talk about the intestines as being plumbing. So it's not the way it's supposed to be. That's not how our system actually supports itself. So that's something to consider. You do want to work on all those other things, whether it's, making sure you're getting good fats, whether it's making sure you're eating more anti-inflammatory foods versus pro-inflammatory foods. It's whether you're going for, a brisk walk, or, moving furniture to where you're actually using your muscles. Those types of things actually help you with making sure that the things that you're actually absorbing is turning into something that's functional. So when you have those gaps and everything, you just kind of open yourself up to a lot of toxins, which also have a cascading effect in the negative. So this other stuff is the positive cascade effect. It's called like a positive feedback mechanism. You want to do things to hopefully, right, you're doing it for the right reason, to stimulate and to support a positive result, versus when you have that leaky gut and you have an inflamed gut, it's going to add all these other pathogens in there and make you more susceptible to things that your body probably can't fight. So that's an important thing to think about. I try to kind of give people visuals, so they'll be like, inflamed gut, leaky gut, what does that mean? So sometimes there's holes in your gut. I was like, no, not quite, but there's gaps, right? But with the great thing about that is they've shown some really good results clinically as well as through research that you can close those gaps, okay? This is not a, into the line type of thing. There's a lot of good things you could do So the things I mentioned before, yes, fiber is very important for that. Good fats are very important for that. Also, things that are antioxidants are really good for that, those types of things. And if you have that leaky system, you can kind of understand that you may not be able to get the nutrients that you need. So if you're looking, if you're trying to get a good multivitamin, or you're trying to do what your doctor said and said, hey, I need to get a vitamin D in me, those types of things. If you have that plumbing issue, so to speak, or you're overall inflamed, you're probably not going to absorb what you're taking anyway, or what you're trying to do. So that's a really good thing to always check and make sure you've got good support for that. And one thing that I'm going to give you guys when I do share my website information and all this stuff afterwards is I'm going to send everybody a flyer that actually shows, it's a desk reference, it's a physician's desk reference kind of handout that shows certain vitamins, minerals, CoQ10, which is an enzyme, those types of things that are depleted with certain medications. Okay, so medications obviously are needed. Okay, they're needed and they should be followed by your physician. Absolutely. It may, if you're having some issues with that, or you're having other things come up after starting to change maybe a medication profile, or after starting something, that's a good thing to actually talk to your doctor about, because sometimes medications can deplete your body of these essential nutrients that nutrients and things like that your body needs for pathways, and you don't realize that could actually be what's happening. And so all you need to do is make sure you're looking at the right foods. You're maybe, if you need to, look for a good supplement, those types of things, so you'll know, oh, it's not a new problem, maybe it's actually a result of something else, but it's not that bad. I can actually manage that myself before it turns into something that I don't want. Because when you start depleting your B vitamins, there's a lot of things that actually go into that. A lot of brain health, a lot of skin health. I mean, a lot of anxiety, depression, those types of things can be affected by that. So you just want to make sure that you're not going down that rabbit hole for no reason. It can just be a result of the medication you're taking. So I'm going to send you that, because it kind of shows different medications, and it shows some things that vitamins and minerals that may be depleted with that. That way you just at least have a roadmap, and you can say, hey doc, can we kind of take a look at this? Do you think this may be something that I want to take a look at, or whatever? And a lot of times when I encourage people to be their own health advocate with their physicians and kind of let them know about some of this stuff, the doctors may not have like, oh yeah, go do that. They're like, oh, that sounds good. It's, if it's not their like wheelhouse, they're just going to be like, yeah, sure, that makes sense, type of thing. And if you have any questions about that, or you do see your doctor and they come back with some recommendations, but you just don't know where to go, please feel free to reach out to me and everything like that. Maybe I can help you wade through some information. I'm happy to do that. So that's something to think about too, is maybe your medications can do that as well. Two other things that I want to touch on real quickly, because I want to make sure I'm taking care of everybody's time here. I really appreciate all the attention. Is sleep and stress. You may not know that those are relate in a very profound way. So when I talk to people in general about their total wellness, I always ask about their sleep. I always ask about their stress management. I know one of the things, and it's kind of interesting, I think sometimes we, in this, in our country, maybe at least, I know there's probably some other ones, but I'm just thinking about the people the physicians I've been around. It's in some countries, it's like, okay, we're going to support your health, right? And try not to go down a rabbit hole we don't want to go down. But sometimes we don't think about how we should have put some things into place. and beforehand, and we think about it afterwards, after we're seeing a doctor, after something else is happening to us. So sleep is very important because those connections with your circadian rhythms actually does influence your immune system. Okay, so it's getting this feedback going, yep, it's nighttime. When that's why people tell you to eliminate blue light, or eliminate like this kind of light from TVs and from laptops and your phones and things like that, is because it disrupts your melatonin. So it's not necessarily you need to supplement all the time with a melatonin. Sometimes it's about supporting the other things in your life that actually stimulate that natural response. Melatonin, and you may be not able to, from a genetic standpoint, maybe you can't actually make that. There are people that are like that. And when that happens, yes, you have to supplement. But it's not always the first thing to think about, because when the sun goes down, that is a trigger automatically from the dawn of time that we stimulate melatonin when the light goes down. So if we are going to be in front of artificial light, that disrupts that completely. So when we do that, we don't realize we either don't wake up rested, we have a shorter amount of time that we are asleep, okay, or we don't completely sleep well throughout the night and we wake up. Now, going to the bathroom to pee is not necessarily one of those things you should check off your list, okay? That's okay, that you should go to the bathroom. What I'm saying is those types of things where you wake up and you're just like looking at the clock and you're like, oh man, it's 2:00. To sleep. I got to go back to sleep. How am I going to go back to sleep? I've got things to do. It's just disruption is going to negatively affect your immune system. So you want to make sure you're setting the stage in 7 to 9 hours of good sleep. Okay, if you're a new mom, that's not going to happen. Very much, right? But as we age, even then, there are things not be as big of a trigger for us that we need to pay attention to the other things we're doing in our lives. Exercise early is very good. Early in the day is very good for that because it does help you sleep late. Hey. I don't know. I think I might have dropped. I'm sorry. I'm glad it kind of came back. I'm about to land.
You did drop for just a minute.
I stopped. I was like, oh, wait a minute. So I'm almost finished here because the other thing I wanted, so that's something to think about. If you're not sleeping well, that can negatively affect your immunity. So think about those other things that I talked about and try to implement some of those, and then try and see if that helps, because you are going to help your immunity that way. And last is kind of stress management. I know, again, after just working and being around you wonderful women who are survivors, that is something that I know there's a lot of great programs at the Pink House for stress management. There's Reiki, at least there was, I know it's kind of hard to do from a distance, but Reiki, and there's been yoga, and there's been a lot of those types of things. So stress management actually does, or your stress and the lack of sleep will actually increase those pro-inflammatory cytokines. So you want to make sure that you are managing your stress. There's a lot of good nutrients and botanicals that can help you with that. I sometimes recommend, eleuthero root is great. Ashwagandha is fantastic. Holy basil is great. I take a botanical that kind of encompasses a lot of those things together. But that is one of those things, that instead of fight or flight, that's exactly what our system will start to do if it's chronic. Okay, so if you have that chronic stress like all the time, we are meant to run away from somebody who's trying to catch us, or a dinosaur trying to eat us. But we're not meant to stay at a red line all the time. We are meant to come back down. So our body will start to fight us back because we're not taking that into consideration, and we're not coming down and having that stabilization. We should be able to recover from stress. Internally, our adrenals, cortisol, all those types of things plays a huge role in our immunity. So I know there's maybe a lot of stuff to throw at everybody. I wanted to give a good diversity of things that you could kind of take a bite of and maybe go look at more for yourself.
Absolutely, absolutely. And everyone stay well and take care of yourselves. And Brandy, we'll talk again soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everybody.